Okay, guys, here we go. Today, we're going to learn all about cosine law. There are two situations which sine law doesn't help us. Thankfully, there's cosine law. Again, sine law and cosine law are used for non-right triangles where we're trying to find angles or sides. Cosine law is used in the following two situations. If we happen to know two sides and the angle between those two sides, and as a result, we're looking for the third side of the triangle. So if we know two sides and the angle between that side, we can find the third side of the triangle. Sine law can't help us here, but cosine law can. The other thing is, if we know all three sides and we're looking for any of the angles, then cosine law is also to the rescue. So cosine law is used in those two special situations. The formula for cosine law is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cos c, and that's angle C. So just to clarify, C, A, B, A, B all represent the three sides of the triangle. But capital C, remember capital letters represent angles, represents the cosine of angle C. Now it doesn't matter what letters are in your triangle, whether it's ABC, JKL, or XYZ. Angle C always represents the angle that you know. In this case up here, where we know two sides and their contained angle, that's angle C, or it's the angle you're trying to find. So if we know these three sides and we're looking for an angle, that angle is noted as C. So let's see how this works. Example, find the measure of side P. So we know two sides and a contained angle. Remember what I just said, that angle C is the angle that we know. Remember that. Because cosine law is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cos c. So another way of thinking about it is that the side out here, I don't like that highlighter, it's way too bright. Let's try that again. The side that's out here and its corresponding angle are on the left, the far left, and the far right of the formula. So here we're looking for little p, and we know angle p. So when we write out our cosine law, we'd write out the p's as on the opposite ends of the formula. So it'll be little p squared equals little q squared plus little r squared minus 2 times q times r times the cosine of angle p. So once more, just so we're clear, what's on the far left and the far right of the question in this question is the angle that we know and the side that we're looking for. And then all we have to do is substitute in what we know. So little p squared is what we're trying to find, or actually p is what we're trying to find. This is q here, this is r here. So that's going to be 6 squared plus 3 squared minus 2 times 6 times 3 times the cosine of angle P, which is 59 degrees. Simplifying this, we get 36 plus 9 minus 2 times 6 times 3 is 36. Now what's the cosine of 59 degrees? Use a calculator and press 59, and then press the cosine button. When you do that, you're going to get 0.5150 to 4 decimal places. We should use a minimum of 4 decimal places when we do these calculations. As a matter of fact, while I just wrote down 0.5150, I've maintained all decimal places on my calculator. I suggest you do the same, because what we're then going to do is we're going to turn around and multiply 0.5150 by 36. So if you still have that whole number on your calculator, take that big number and multiply it by 36. And when you do that, you're going to get 18.54. And while I'm only writing that part down to 2 decimal places, I have the whole thing on my calculator still. And once again, I suggest that you do the same, at least until we get to the final answer. 36 plus 9 is 45, and it's 45 minus that. So how can I do that? If your calculator has a plus minus button, which any of mine do, you can use the minus button to associate it with 18.54 because there's that minus sign there. And then you can just go plus 45. When you do that, you'll see that the answer is 26.46 if you round, etc., 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 etc. And then to figure out what the measure of side P is, we're going to take the square root of 26.46. Where's the square root button on this? Here we go. And we're going to see that P is 5.1. Are these centimeters? Yep, centimeters. That's the measure of side P. So when we're doing our cosine law calculations, we have to write out a number of steps. And just like any time we're using complex calculations, we need to make sure to observe order of operations. That is to say that we multiply before we add or subtract, and we do exponents before we multiply or add. So just remember BEDMAS, because BEDMAS, brackets, exponents, division, multiplication, and addition and subtraction, are important everywhere, but they certainly come into play when we're talking about cosine law. Now, let's do another example. Find the measure of angle U. So we're looking for this angle right here. Why that's important is because we're talking about T, U, and V. So our formula will have T, U, and V in it. And the letter that's going to be on the outside is going to represent the angle that we're looking for. So that's U. So it's going to be U squared equals T squared plus V squared minus 2 times T times V times the cosine of angle U. Now in this case, we know all 3 sides and we're looking for the measure of angle U. So we're going to plug in those sides. This is U, this is V, and this is T. So U is 8. That's 8 squared. T is 5. V is 4. Oopsies, that's not an equal sign. Should be a minus sign. So that's 2 times 5 times 4 times the cosine of angle U. 8 squared is 64. 5 squared is 25. 4 squared is 16. Multiplying 2 times 5 times 4 gives us 40. And then it's times the cosine of angle U. This next step is where lots of students will make a mistake. The classic mistake here is taking 25 adding 16, and then subtracting 40. The problem is that 40 is linked to the cos of u. So you can absolutely add the numbers in yellow, which we're going to do, and that gives us 41. We cannot subtract the 40, so don't do that. The 40 is linked to the cos u. We can't do anything with that, so we're going to move on to the next step. Since we can't combine the 41 and the 40, the 41 is going to take a hike over to the left side of the equation. So 64 take away 41 is going to equal negative 40 times the cosine of u. 64 minus 41 is 23. That's going to equal negative 40 times the cosine of u. And the cosine of u is going to be 23 divided by negative 40. Now, what is 23 divided by negative 40? Well, 23 divided by 40, a negative, is exactly, I'm not rounding here, is exactly negative 0.575. We should write this to 4 decimal places, okay? Should write this to 4 decimal places. I thought that this has something else. Oh well. Oh yeah, that's what I want. There we go. This should typically be written to 4 decimal places. Now this is exactly negative 0.575. So to find out what u is, we make sure we have negative 0.575 entered on the calculator. Make sure the negative is there. Then press the shift button if you have one of my calculators, or a second function button if you have your own, and then the cosine button. If you did it right, and I'll make sure to write this in red, you'll see that u is going to equal 125 degrees. But in order to do that again, you're going to have to press either the shift button if you're using one of my calculators, or the second function button, and then press the cosine button. If you have negative 0.575 and you press shift or second and then cos, you will get 125 degrees. Most of your calculators will be in degree mode. If you'll see like a D at the top of the screen, or maybe a DEG, that means it's in degree mode. If you see a G, or like an R, then it could be in radian or gradient mode, and you'll want to not use your calculator in those modes. You'll want to change it to degree mode, because if you don't do that, you'll just get wrong answers every time you do questions like this. Okay? All right. So, just like the first question, we see that there's a lot of steps that go into figuring out an angle when we know the 3 sides in a triangle. Now, let's do some more examples. 2 more, in fact. Solve the triangle. Solving a triangle, remember, is when we find all 3 sides and all 3 angles. In this question right here, we know all 3 sides. So let's find an angle. Does it matter which angle we look for first? No. So just pick one. Now, I'm doing this by myself. You're listening to me right now. So I'm going to pick one. Let's pick K. It's up top there. We're going to look for K. So because we're looking for angle K, K is going to be what is on the leftmost and rightmost part of the equation. We'd write it as K squared equals J squared plus L squared minus 2 times J times L times the cosine of angle K. Now, we got to plug in what we know. That's 10 squared equals 8 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times 8 times 11 times the cosine of angle K. That's 100, 64, 121. Then we get 2 times 8 times 11, which is going to be 176 times the cosine of K. Again, we can only add the first two numbers on the right side. 64 and 121 make 185 minus 176 times the cosine of K. Then we'll bring 185 over to the left side, leaving us with negative 176 cos K. Make sure that the negative sign doesn't disappear. We get negative 85 equals negative 176 cosine of K. So when we figure out what negative 185 divided by negative 176 is, that represents the cosine of angle K. Two negatives divide to give us a positive, so we can just go 85 divided by 176, and when we do that, we get to 4 decimal places 0.4830, rounded to 4 decimal places. Second cosine gives us an angle of 61 degrees at angle K. So going up here, that means that this right here is 61 degrees. Now, we still have to find angle J and angle L. In order to find angle J or angle L, we could use cosine law a second time. But the cool thing is that since we know one angle side pair, and we know one of two sides, and we're looking for the other angle, we could use sine law. So let's use sine law. And let's find L. So the sine of L over little l, which is 11, equals the sine of 61 over 10. Now, so how are we going to do this? Well, here's what I would do. Okay, here's what I would do. I would take this and I would figure out what the sine of 61 is and divide it by 10. So 61 sine is 0.8746. And then I'm going to divide that by 10. And that's going to be sine L over 11. So when I take that and divide it by 10, I get 0.08746. And then to figure out what sine L is, I'm going to cross multiply. When I cross multiply, I'm multiplying 11 by 0.08746. So multiply by 11, and I get 0.9621 if I write it to 4 rounded decimal places. Then I go second sine, because we're using sine law, and I figure out that the measure of angle L is 74 degrees. So this angle right here is 74 degrees. Now I could use sine or cosine law again and find the measure of angle J, but here's what I know. I know that in a triangle, all three angles add to 180. So J plus K plus L equal 180. Now, we don't know J, but we know that K is 61 and we know that L is 74. So when we add those two together, we get 135 degrees. And when we take 135 away from 180, we're going to get 45 degrees. So angle J is 45 degrees. And now that we know all three sides, they're all given to us, and we have found all three angles, we have solved the triangle. So you must know 6 pieces of information in order to have solved the triangle correctly and completely. Okay? All right. One more example. Mr. Hutton goes golfing with Mr. Johnston. He hits the ball 108 yards from the tee. So stop right there and we'll just visualize this here, okay? We'll visualize this. This is 108 yards. That's my first shot. All right? At an angle of 84 degrees to his last shot, so in other words, that's 84 degrees, he hits another shot 182 yards into the hole. Wow! I only wish I could golf like that. So this right here represents 182 yards. The question asks us, how far is the hole from the tee? In other words, what we're trying to find is the distance from here to here as the crow flies. Ah, what do the two black lines and the red dotted line form? A triangle. So we're looking for this distance right here. So we can use cosine law to do that. We don't have ABCs or GHIs or whatever, so we can just skip right to the formula here. We're looking for D, so that's D squared equals 108 squared plus 182 squared minus 2 times 108 times 182 times a cosine of 84 degrees. So what's 108 squared? I have no idea. So I'm going to calculate it. It's 11,664. 182 squared, also have no idea. But thank goodness we can use a calculator, and it's 33,124. Then we're going to figure out what 2 times 108 is, which is actually I can do without a calculator. That's 216. They're going to multiply that by 182, and we're going to get 39,312. And we're going to multiply that by the cosine of 84, which to 4 decimal places is 0.1045. Now remember the importance of retaining those decimal places. So I'm going to take that 0.1045 blah 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 my calculator and I multiply it by 39,312. So, and I've got an answer and I'll tell you what it is in a minute. First off though, we will add the 11,664 and the 33,124. And if we add those together, we're going to get 44,788 minus. Now, when we multiplied 39,312 by 0.1045, we're going to get 4,109.22. And again, we can just put the plus minus button and then add that to the 44,788. 788. And when we do that, we are going to get 40,678.78. And then we're taking the square root and we're figuring, oopsies, don't need the squared there if I'm taking the square root. So let's fix that up, fix that up. The distance is going to be the square root of 40,678.78. So the square root of 40,678.78, which is 201.69, and the units we're using in this question are yards. So this is a word problem. It had a partial picture. We interpreted the partial picture. We used cosine law, and we figured out that the distance, if you hit it directly from the t to the whole, was 201.69 yards. All right, that's it for the lesson. You will be given a homework assignment with plenty of practice questions to try.